Nearly every ARPG has a version of spin to win or whirlwind type ability that you can channel. Tons of people always love this style of gameplay, and last Epoch has a Void Knight version that has the ability to slice through enemies during the campaign and endgame alike with the skill Warpath. By pairing this ability with a Racing Strike, we overcome the biggest weakness it previously had and transform slow elite or boss kills into quick encounters, making this a powerhouse build. If you like this version, stay tuned to the channel as I'm currently also working on a fire version using the Paladin Mastery as well. Let's go ahead and show the build in action. Now we've got a stronger enemy here. I've got the Sigils preemptively popped. I can go ahead and charge in and pop in a Racing Strike. We can also get that Anomaly up, and you can see that this boss is definitely not going down slowly. In fact, this build has a tremendous amount of damage. You can see the chunks being taken out of its health every time we use that Racing Strike. This is the biggest advantage over traditional Warpath builds that you may have seen elsewhere. It's just the added ability this has to kill single targets or even bosses. This is a strength-based Void Knight, which is excellent for new or veteran players alike, as strength will not only increase the damage of your skills, but reduce the damage you take from enemies as well through a higher armor value. First up is Warpath itself. Now Warpath is a channeled ability, and you can move the mouse or controller, depending on what you're playing, in order to move the character around while you channel this ability. We've got some specialization points here that's going to leave a trail behind us, and you can vaguely see those on the screen. They're going to deal some damage over time to any enemies that go in its wake. This is the foundation of the build, and it's just the beginning, because we're going to add a lot more to this to make this a unique build that is capable of clearing all content in the game. The biggest setback for spin to win builds or whirlwind style builds in any ARPG is the damage that it can deal to elites or boss type mobs. We're going to counteract this by running a Racing Strike. A Racing Strike is an incredibly hard hitting ability, and you can see the difference in damage with the tooltip here. 3,000 as compared to a little over 10,000. In addition to that, a Racing Strike can increase its base critical strike chance and the critical strike damage it deals, allowing us to hit incredibly hard. We'll also be taking points in essence at the end, and this is going to give you a damage increase to void damage after using a Racing Strike and landing a critical strike hit. That means when you go back to Whirlwinding, you're going to have additional damage dealt to the target. Whirlwind, which will also be transformed to a void ability with this particular build, is going to have a chance to apply Time Rot, which is a damage over time component. That in return is going to then synergize with a Racing Strike. When you have 12 or more stacks of this, your Racing Strike is going to have a chance to deal 100% additional damage as well. This can give you a solid 1-2 combo where you can essentially open up with a Racing Strike, start to use your Warpath, and then continue to use a Racing Strike as it comes off cooldown. Lunge is in the loadout simply for mobility. You can actually be channeling or holding down the whirlwind button, whatever your keybind may be, and use Lunge to quickly travel to another target, allowing you to have incredible uptime and maintain some of the buffs that we're putting into this build and get 100% uptime on those as well. Within the Lunge tree, we're mainly focusing on reducing the cooldown. We're going to have some utility in terms of letting Lunge heal us on hit, and the Lunge will also provide some frailty, which is a means of reducing the damage that enemies can deal as well. We're not really concerning ourselves with the overall damage that Lunge can do, and again, you can take this tooltip and compare it to the other ones you've seen so far. Next up is Anomaly, and rather than using it as the combo ability that it normally is, we're going to use the specialization points to transform this into a better version for this build. With immediacy, you can remove that combo effect and it will just instantly trigger that. This is going to be very good because we can now apply this onto enemies, giving them debuffs, and at the same time providing buffs for our own character as well. Time Bubble is an interesting ability, and we're actually going to transform this so that it follows our character around, allowing us to have 100% uptime on this ability as well. Some of the benefits of Time Bubble are going to include increased attack speed, which will benefit for our Whirlwind. We'll get access to Health Leech and increased Health Leech at the same time. And on top of this, we'll be applying a debuff from Mark of Rot, and this is going to cause the enemy to take increased void damage when they return. And since all of our damage has been converted to void, this essentially just gives us a huge damage buff. Sigils of Hope will be the final ability that you unlock with this particular build. And what we're mainly after here is Last Wish. This gives us a 6% chance in order to summon one of these whenever we kill an enemy. This will dramatically increase our clear speed, as we're often killing enough enemies to actually get maximum stacks of this just while farming the trash. When you get to a boss, you'll want to preemptively cast these or get them up whenever you can and then engage the boss, but for the trash you can simply let this effect proc them on their own. On top of that, Sigils of Hope will provide a really solid damage buff, not just through the empowering sigils, but also through the Sigils of Despair. Overall, this is just a great boost to this build in its damage output. After unlocking Anomaly, make sure that you place 15 points into the Paladin tree as well. That way you can activate Sigils of Hope for the final skill in your loadout. The gameplay is incredibly easy. Like any other spin to win build that you may have played previously, you'll want to do somewhat large circles around the enemies, and that's going to allow you to dodge some of the incoming attacks. If you have really tight circles, they'll be more likely to hit you with projectiles that they might be throwing your way. The added benefit of this build, as mentioned before, is you can be holding down the channel button and then hit your Lunge, and it will maintain the channel while you head towards your target, or begin it immediately once you arrive. If you encounter some beefier enemies, you can always lunge in, use your Racing Strike, and you'll see that it hits significantly harder than the Warpath ability. However, due to the cooldown, you'll have to manage this and use it when it's most effective, but this is fantastic for taking out elites or even bosses if you happen to be in the monolith stage or even working your way through the campaign. For large packs, you can always use your anomaly, and you'll see there's a couple of elites here. I can go ahead and pop the anomalies for some additional burst, and then go ahead and take them out with the erasing strike. This combo between Warpath and Erasing Strike really makes this an incredibly potent build. As you can see, simply just from killing the trash, that the sigils will begin to stack up, and that's just from that 6% chance that you have. However, if you're working your way into a boss, you can always cast these manually and then engage the boss for some damage boost, and you can refresh them as needed during the encounter. This build has incredibly high sustain, but you want to keep in mind that you can't regenerate mana while channeling. Now in this example, I'm currently at full mana, but I'm going to go ahead and spend some, and then start channeling. You'll see that my mana regen has paused. So if you're fighting a boss and working your way through all the skill rotations, you may eventually just have to stop channeling, avoid the damage for a few seconds, and then begin your combo again. All the information for this build can be found on Last Epoch Tools, and I'll leave a link in the video description. This will include when and where to place your points, with a point-by-point distribution for both the passive tree and the specialization tree. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.